Welcome into an NFL Week 10 edition of the RotoWire Sports Betting Pod. Nick Whalen, John McKechnie here from RotoWire to hopefully help you make some money on this 14-game NFL slate. John, we're back to our traditional recording time on Thursday evening, so we won't spend a whole lot of time talking Thursday night football. By the time most of you hear this, Panthers-Bears will be either underway or already happened. But I will tell you, I'm leaning Chicago. You're seeing this number of 3.5. I like the Bears running game here. I think that's the best unit within the unit that I trust most. We got some injuries on the defensive side for Carolina. I do think the Panthers have a chance to throw the ball on the Chicago defense. I'm not sure I trust Bryce Young with a depleted receiving core to actually take advantage of that.
No, I'm with you there. It's interesting that the line is pretty much held steady all week, even with I thought initially when it was 1.5, I think going into last weekend, and then you see it move up to 3. It's like, oh, maybe Justin Fields is going to be back, but that doesn't seem to be the case tonight. And yet things have remained stable ever since Monday. So that seems to suggest that Vegas really does view even the Tyson Bagent-led Bears to be, a field goal better than the Panthers. And I tend to agree. I think that Bryce Young, I saw a very interesting kind of heat map chart of his throws from this year, completely unable to throw over the middle, which I suppose is not surprising, but it's still, something that even a Bears defensive coordinator can look at and be like, all right, well, how do we work this to our advantage? The Panthers, they're in trouble here. I think that, this could end up being, one of the better games of the Bears season. I know that's not the highest bar. That Washington Thursday night game was pretty sweet from them, but beyond that, we're big narrative guys. DJ Moore revenge game, that's going to be nice, and D'Onta Foreman revenge game as well. So I mean, there's a lot cooking in favor of the Bears here, but seriously, I do think that the Panthers are just they're a moribund franchise right now, and that's not how you should be feeling halfway through this season when you got your potential franchise quarterback of the future.
Yeah, we're talking like they are playing against the Chiefs tonight, and we're saying all these things, and they're going up against the Bears. And it's like, man, it's just hard to imagine them having a chance against this team. I mean, it does speak to the fact that the Bears' running game has improved. The Bears' running defense has improved as well. But even with injuries on the Bears side, I don't think they'll have Edmonds tonight. I still leave Chicago at home. It's uninspiring right now. And I saw that same passing heat map for Bryce Young, and I don't know if it's an unwillingness to throw down the field. I don't know if he physically can't see that far down the field, but it's been a lot of checkdowns, a lot of safe throws, and it's part of the reason that the Panthers are basically struggling to get to 20 points every week. So that is our quick and dirty analysis on Thursday Night Football. We like the Bears. We'll not be including that one on the Circa card, which, by the way, John, kudos to you. Kudos to me. 4-1 week last week. Should have been 5-0 if Blake Grupe just hits a 47-yard field goal instead of banging it off the upright, or if the Saints do what would have been the very cool thing and kick a field goal instead of kneeling it out late in that game. Good sportsmanship, I suppose, but we get no credit there. Nonetheless, we got to keep this momentum going. So as we go game by game here, we'll talk about some of the differences in the DraftKings and the FanDuel lines versus what we have locked at Circa, some games that we might include on our 5-pick card for Week 10. One of those, John, it may be the Germany game. I'm going to try to sell you on the Indianapolis Colts, who are 2-point favorites. That's also the line at Circa. Technically a road game for the Colts. Obviously, it's neutral site. This will be an early morning wake up for those of us in the United States. I really like the Colts here. I'm a little scared of how much I like the Colts because I don't think the Colts are actually a good team. However, they could score. They allow points, but they also score points. They're the only team in the NFL that scored at least 20 in every game this season. They're 8-1 to their team total over on the year. It feels like every week we recite these Mac Jones stats. He is now 3-16 straight up, 4-15 ATS as a dog in his career. He's 1-14 ATS in his last 15 starts as an underdog. And the real hammer here, John, via the Action Network, who I plug this every week. They do a great betting breakdown, just giving all these crazy stats on each game. Favorites in international games are 32-10-1 straight up.
I mean, that's a significant sample. We're over the magic number of 30 that we learned about in our Stats 101 classes. So there's that. I think has every favorite covered overseas this year? I guess the Bills didn't against your Jags, but other than that,
Sure
I think
did.
it's been all faves all the way. So I'm sold. I wasn't a tough sell on this one because I was really digging the Pats last week, and so therefore that was I manually selected that game to be included on the quad box, and watching the Mac Jones like helium balloon passes that go to nobody against Washington.
Yeah.
I mean, even with how bad Indianapolis's defense has been, it can at least be opportunistic a little bit. And boy, I have no less than no faith in this Patriots offense, and the defense was supposed to be kind of its carrying factor throughout this season, but it's gotten too banged up to where it's nothing more than like an average unit at this point. And I think Indianapolis is multiple. We'll have to see what's up with Josh Downs. I didn't catch where he's at on the injury report from today, but you still have Michael Pittman. You still have Jonathan Taylor, who's yet to have like his nuclear explosion game. So that's coming. That's not too far off, I wouldn't think. And yeah, I just think the Patriots are just too much of a mess right now to trust. So it's a small number. Indianapolis only has to cover that much, 1.5. So I'm with you there.
And look, I don't think Indianapolis like completely dominates this game by any means. I think we probably get some wacky Gardner Minshew turnovers. I do worry about some of the injuries in that receiving core. Josh Downs did not practice today, Thursday. Alec Pierce was also added to the injury report, so they could be down some firepower in that passing game. But we're leaning on the running game for Indianapolis, and more than anything, I'm just leaning on New England not scoring enough points. If the Colts get to 24, 27. I don't think the Pats are getting to 27 or 30. And I just don't see it happening. I don't think the Pats are capable of doing that right now. Last week against Washington, they go down 10-0. They storm back. They're up 14-10. You're thinking, all right, okay, things might be looking all right here. And the offense just disappears in the second half at home. There's no excuse for that against Washington. I think the Colts are probably at this point a slightly better team than Washington. They're at a similar level of frisk week to week. And, I think Minshew and Howell are similar in some ways. And the Patriots just, teams that kind of keep coming after you can put together long drives. They might have some variance in there, but they struggle in these situations. So I like the Colts -2 there. We'll see if we end up including that one on the card. Let's go to your team, John. Baltimore Ravens. They have forced their way into are they the best team, not only in the AFC, but in the NFL conversation over the last couple of weeks. They're coming off of back-to-back romps last week, just dominating the Seattle Seahawks. They are home again for the Cleveland Browns. 6.5 is our line in favor of Baltimore. This is a tricky one for me. We got a low total all the way down at 38. It's hard to imagine the way the Ravens are rolling right now. It's hard to imagine them losing this game, but AFC North battle, it should be low scoring. Like I could see Cleveland hanging around.
I do too, and I think that the under is in play because I think both defenses are just that good. I think Baltimore did what it did against Cleveland earlier this year because the Dorian Thompson-Robinson experiment was simply unfair to the rookie. That was just not right. Basically, what happened to him. So basically, the Ravens got set up in primo field position like all afternoon. They basically just had a live practice against the Browns that counted towards their record. This will be different. Deshaun Watson, hot take, better than DTR. So I think he gives them more of a shot, but I don't expect Cleveland to really, light up this scoreboard either. Like I don't expect that against almost anyone with Cleveland. Certainly not against Baltimore's defense at home. But I think that this is closer to like 4 for me if I was making the line in favor of Baltimore. So with that difference in play, I think Baltimore needs to clean up its turnovers. That was an issue even last week in the rump. I don't think that they get away squeaky clean from those turnovers the way that they did last week. So I like this one to be close. I'm thinking something like a 20-17 Baltimore win.
Yeah, I don't see Baltimore losing straight up. I really don't. But I think when you have what feel like far and away the two best defenses in the NFL right now going at it, I think Baltimore is going to struggle relative to what we've seen the last couple of weeks. And I certainly don't expect an explosive performance by the Browns. I mean, the ground game, even in what should be some advantageous matchups the last couple of weeks, has really sputtered. So I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball on Baltimore, but I also don't think this is a game where Baltimore is cruising to 30 points like they have the last few weeks. So my lean would be on the Browns plus 6.5. Let's go to Texans-Bengals, John. This was a game that I loved at the beginning of the week. It's at 6.5. It's locked at 6.5 in the Circa contest. But we have some pretty significant injuries on the Cincinnati side of things that we're keeping an eye on. It's not looking good for T. Higgins. We got the dreaded Rappaport tweet that he's expected to miss Sunday's game against the Texans. That's almost always a death knell, even though he's not technically ruled out at this point. Got injured in practice earlier this week. So T. Higgins, very unlikely to play. And Jamar Chase, he's back on the practice field today. He was limited. That feels like a true 50-50. So even without those two, Houston has like one of the longest injury reports of all time. So they're super banged up as well. I still think Cincinnati wins this game. I don't know that I would touch it in the Circa contest if Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are out.
That's right, because the depth beyond them is not spectacular. And you don't blame the Bengals for that. I mean, in terms of your roster construction, you get Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Like you don't need to like invest a ton in your receiver depth generally.
The GM totally blew it. You got to have stars as your fourth and fifth receiver.
That's right. But maybe one Charlie Jones gets back in the fold here. Blah blah blah. But yeah, even if we see a lot of Tyler Boyd and Trenton Irwin out here and Mitchell Wilcox doing stuff this past weekend. I mean, it was a cavalcade of strange players to see out there. Mm-hmm. In primetime on Sunday night. But I think you summed it up great, where coming into this week on Monday, when you start looking at the lines pretty seriously, it's like, oh, I'm all over the Bengals here. Yeah, it's a lot tougher when you kind of have Joe Burrow playing with one hand behind his back. So I think the Bengals still win this one. It would really take a sort of like look ahead type of sleepwalk from the Bengals to lose this game. But they've sort of run out of runway to have those type of games. Like the beginning of the season was so rough for them that they kind of need to be locked in the rest of the season. So as impressive as Houston was last week, it's important to remember that it took, a last second drive. It took 70 yards from CJ Stroud to beat the Buccaneers at home.
The Buccaneers.
I mean, the Bengals should win, or the Bengals are going to win this game, but I'm with you where 6.5 with pending the injury report on Friday. Feels a little bit rich for my blood.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, if Jamar Chase plays, I think I could be talked into it. And again, if you're not familiar with the Circa contest, these lines don't change. When they come out on Thursday around noon, that's where they lock for the week. So, if Chase plays, maybe we see that bump up to 7. And it'll depend what we see on the Houston side of things. They have, Dameon Pierce, Nico Collins, Robert Woods, basically every offensive lineman on their team. Yeah, Will Anderson is banged up. I know they opened the practice window for Derek Stingley. He's not going to play this week. I don't think Will Anderson's going to play. I think that's huge for this defense. So if Chase is in and we think he's going to look like himself, I do still think the Bengals can win this game by a touchdown at home. I think, what you hit on last week, like the narrative has been CJ Stroud. He's awesome. He's one of the best rookies we've seen. That's all true. They still needed basically a miracle to beat the Buccaneers. Like I think the Texans might be just a little bit overvalued right now. And frankly, that's not really showing up in the line. I think this could have been, 5.5 and that wouldn't be all that crazy, but we'll see if Chase plays, we'll have to change our tune, but this is kind of an incomplete grade at this point. Still lean Bengals. Just if you're looking for a straight up pick. All right, it's time. Niners, Jags, both teams coming off of a bye. Niners, one of several 3-point favorites exactly this week on the road at Jacksonville. Our total is 45. I'm really trying not to just hedge my mental health on this game, but I think this is a good spot for the 49ers. I think we kind of forgot how banged up they've been, how many key players have been out these last couple of weeks. Trent Williams was back at practice today. Deebo Samuel is not even on the injury report. Drake Greenlaw should be back. I think a full-strength 49ers team with something to prove coming out of a bye. I know Jacksonville's coming out of the bye as well. I know the Jags are rolling. They've won 5 in a row. I don't think it's a blowout by any means. I think the Jags put up a great fight here. But I think this is a kind of reminder game for the 49ers that, all right, when we're healthy, when we're rolling, we're still one of the 3 best teams in the NFL. And, as great as this Jacksonville team is, I still view them as one tier below, the teams like Philly and KC and San Francisco.
Yeah, San Francisco, a month ago where this line would look a lot different. Obviously, they lose 3 games going into the bye, and we have what we have now. But I do like the 49ers in this spot, giving Kyle Shanahan extra time to get prepped up for this one, them getting healthier, them getting Chase Young into the mix as well. It feels like a lot of problems that are going to be thrown Jacksonville's way. And I'm not sure that like the coaching staff, or namely the offensive coordinator, is going to be able to kind of match what San Francisco is doing on defense. And obviously Shanahan and company have the upper hand offensively as far as dialing things up. So you get Deebo Samuel back in there as well. You get the all-world left tackle back. I really do like the Niners, and I hate to say it to you, pal, but I wouldn't mind including them on the card.
I would love to include them on the card because if the 49ers win by more than 3, I'm happy. It's great for a Circa entry. If the Jaguars somehow win this game, then I'm even happier. I mean, this is the emotional hedge speaking, and it is I will tell you, an absolutely terrible way to handicap. But I can't help it. I need years of the Jags being a good team, to like beat this out of my system. I've been conditioned to expect the worst when it comes to the Jags at games like this. And trying to look at it objectively, though, like I really do think this is a good spot for San Francisco. Would love to have gotten it at 2.5, but even at 3, I think San Francisco takes care of business here. There's this false belief that Jacksonville's just running the ball on everybody. And John, it's simply not true. They're 31st in rushing EPA. The touchdowns have been there. The occasional splash plays have been there for Travis Etienne, but they still don't have a backup running back. I think Tank Bigsby might be in the permanent doghouse for the rest of the year. I don't know that they could keep running Etienne like 25 times a game. He got banged up a couple of times these last few weeks. The bye week should help, but they can't subsist like that. On a per carry basis, they have just not been efficient whatsoever. So if that continues this week, which in all likelihood it will against a San Francisco defense that adds Chase Young, by the way, who's quietly been pretty good this year. I think the narrative on Chase Young has been negative, and there's that story coming out that Washington views this as addition by subtraction. The numbers say he's been pretty good, man. I don't think he's going to hurt the San Francisco defense this week.
No, and he's part of. He doesn't have to lead the whole charge. You still have Nick Bosa. Right. They have other quality pieces on that defensive front. I mean, they're even getting stuff out of Clelin Ferrell. So what do you think they're going to get out of Chase Young? I think that was a great trade for them, getting him just a 3rd round pick for him. So yeah, this looks pretty good for San Francisco. I mean, I've still not really wavered from thinking that their A game is the best in the NFL. Purdy does need to turn things around, though. I think that's the one potential fly in the ointment, because if he plays the way that he did those last 3 games, then this game looks a whole lot different. But I'm trusting that the week off to clear the mind and everything will get him back to where he was in September.
In terms of PFF pass rushing grade, Chase Young is right in the same zone as guys like Joey Bosa, Brandon Graham. He's actually ahead of Khalil Mack, Boye Mafe, Josh Sweat, Owe for the Ravens. I don't have the exact number, but he basically ranks like somewhere between 15 and 20 if I'm doing the mental counting here. So a lot to like there. And I think Jacksonville hangs tough, but I really like San Francisco this week. Saints-Vikings. This is one of a series of toss-up games to me, John, that we're going to be talking about in succession here. Saints are 3-point favorites at DraftKings right now. They're 2.5 in the Circa contest. I would really like to trust New Orleans here. On paper, this should be a really good spot. Josh Dobbs now has a full week to integrate. Still asking a lot, to learn an offense in a week. We obviously saw him do it in like 5 minutes last week. And, as you may know, John, he's a smart guy, has an astronaut type of background. But I struggle to find ways other than just kind of abstractly saying like, well, Josh Dobbs, he's pretty good to side with the Vikings here. Getting it at 2.5 pushes me toward the Saints. I think that is a friendly number. We also saw the Saints force 5 turnovers, not commit a single one of their own, and still only win by 7 against the bad Bears team last week.
That's true. And that was at home. This is really the one game that the public can't make its mind up on this week. Like pretty much everything is pretty loud in one direction or the other, like, 60% plus on one side or the other. But this one, it's pretty much dead even. According to VSiN's splits, it's 51% of the money has come in on the Saints, 49 on the Vikings. I think first of all, it's important to note that Justin Jefferson's still going to be out for this game. And I think that, for what Dobbs did last week, it was unbelievable. I mean, I think that was one of the cooler things to happen in an NFL game this season are really in recent memory. I mean, all the stories about the offensive lineman teaching him the cadences right before he's about to go in, Jordan Addison like telling him what the receivers are going to be doing on one side of the formation versus the other in the huddle. That's all great. But still, like I think that this Saints team it's better than the sum of the parts has been less than what we've seen on the field, but I think it's still a very talented team that they have. If they play smart with their with not turning the ball over, I think that adds an element for them. So they need to do that. They need to stay disciplined the way that they did a week ago. But like you said, friendly number 2.5. Like they just need to get in there and beat a Vikings team that we were really talking a lot of trash about through the first 6 weeks of the season when they still had Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson for a decent chunk of that. I don't know. I think that the Saints are my lean on this one. It's interesting how split this one is, and I definitely get the Minnesota side of it, and it feels like that the vibes are definitely like it high in Minnesota, but at the same time, I think the Saints are the better team. I don't mind that they're on the road here. They're in the familiar conditions of a dome, and they're just a more talented squad up and down, especially at the quarterback position. So I like the Saints here a decent bit.
The Saints are starting to score points, which is what we like to see, right? And we would have liked to see more points last week, especially with all the turnovers, which all 5 were on Tyson Bagent, by the way, which is, that's a whole different conversation. But I really, there's just something like at play with this Vikings team that makes me want to stay away. But if you dig into the numbers, everything points you toward the Saints, right? I mean, they're not that far behind teams like Baltimore and Cleveland and the Jets in terms of a lot of the defensive numbers overall per play, things like that. They should be able to shut down the Vikings running game, which has really not been good this season anyway. A lot of teams are shutting that down. But yeah, as long as the Saints, like, if you could guarantee me that the Saints commit 1 or fewer turnovers in this game, I would take them very confidently. I think there's the potential for New Orleans to let Minnesota linger around, much like Atlanta did last week. And if this is a 1-score game going into the fourth quarter, that's where I'm not sure I trust New Orleans, because they're still a team to me that when they need to put together a 75-yard scoring drive, even just to get a field goal, like I still don't really trust that they could do that. Like these teams that we say like, well, we got to trust their defense. Yeah, they have the pieces on offense. They seem to be figuring it out. I still don't think they're well coached though. I don't know. I lean Saints overall. I'm trying to talk myself out of it almost, but I just feel like the Vikings are going to find a way here.
The Saints do anecdotally do some really dumb stuff when they need a score at the end of games, like the Jaguars game, the Houston game as well, where it's like, yeah, let's chunk yardage, no thank you. We're just gonna have Derek Carr throw a bunch of Hail Marys and see what happens, and it just doesn't work out. So they're gonna need to be controlling this, but I think all of us, myself included, can kind of get the goldfish brain going. Remember where we were 2 weeks ago with Josh Dobbs. Like, he was not a plus. He was not something as a selling point. So I don't think that one game against the Falcons, who are stupid, changes that.
Yeah, I know. The Falcons are stupid. I'm definitely stupid at times when it comes to betting, getting sucked into these little narratives. Josh Dobbs was on the Jags a couple years ago. There might still be some lingering love there, but yeah, you're right. You're right. We need to be confident here, and I think it is the New Orleans Saints as our side. Let's talk Packers-Steelers, John. This is one earlier this week. I was really strong on the Steelers. I don't love that the number is sitting right at 3. That's where it's locked at Circa as well. I think the Steelers win this game. I think the Packers had somewhat of a false result last week. Not that they didn't deserve to win, but I think people don't really realize how limited that Rams team was with Brett Rippon at quarterback. Unless you watch that game, the Rams running game has fallen off a cliff really since the Kyren Williams injury. The defense, relative to its talent, I think has actually played okay this year. But even before Matthew Stafford went down, like, he's been slipping considerably over the last few weeks. If it's now like 3 straight duds for Cooper Kupp in fantasy, that's turned into a disaster. And Green Bay comes out of that game feeling a little better. Like, somehow they're very much alive for that 7th spot in the NFC, which might just be like auctioned off to the highest bidder after week 18. But I'm not really buying in on Green Bay or Jordan Love or Matt LaFleur figuring anything out last week against the Rams. With that said, can the Pittsburgh Steelers beat a team by more than 3 points? That's the big question.
They never seem to. It's tough, and Tomlin as a favorite or the Steelers as a favorite, that can always be a little bit tricky. We like them as underdogs, but they're at home. I envision this game being close and ugly all the way throughout, real low scoring,
no
and then Kenny Pickett just finds a way to thread together a touchdown drive somewhere in the fourth quarter to push us over. As far as the spread is concerned, not the over on the game. And I don't think that Jordan Love ends up being able to respond. And there we have it. We have the Steelers winning by more than a field goal. So I feel if we were, putting this on the, as you talk about like the confidence picks, this would be probably like number 5 for me on the week as far as covering goes. But I think that the Steelers do cover.
Okay. Yeah. I really hesitant to take a number sitting right at 3, but ironically the Steelers, like all the Steelers wins this year have come by 4, 5, 7, 7, and 4. So, I just said, like, can they beat a team by more than 3? It's like, well, I guess technically all they do is beat teams by more than 3, but not much more than 3. I think this game plays out basically exactly like last week's Tennessee game, right? Where, at the end, we take a deep breath and we exhale and say, wow, what a sweat that was. I didn't really feel good about that. And the Steelers somehow win a really ugly game where Green Bay probably has a chance at the end. But I actually like a lot of the weapons for Pittsburgh. I don't like Kenny Pickett. I don't think there's a whole lot to like there. But I have been a staunch Najee Harris defender. I'm blaming the offensive line. Like a lot of the advanced numbers on him indicate that he's just basically getting pounded immediately when he touches the ball. For a while, he was leading the league in like time spent behind the line of scrimmage because there's just nowhere to go. Like I don't think Najee Harris in year 3 is just completely fallen off a cliff. The guy's 25 years old. I don't think he's washed up. No. We also have to keep in mind Pittsburgh's basically played this whole year without Deontay Johnson. I know they're struggling to get George Pickens integrated, but I still think when you line up like who are the best players in this game, like I still think the Steelers have 7 of the top 9. With as depleted as Green Bay is, I'm not a huge believer in Jair Alexander being this game-changing cornerback that he's made out to be. Packers still have pretty significant injuries in their defensive backfield. The one thing I think you could say in favor of Green Bay is they finally used Aaron Jones the way that they should have last week. And I know he's been banged up, and that's part of the reason that the carries haven't been there. But if they're going to ride Aaron Jones and he's going to carry the ball 20 times, even if it's not super efficient, like that to me is what's going to keep Green Bay alive.
Right. I mean, that's using your best player, and for every Aaron Jones carry is one less time that Jordan Love has to drop back again and have TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith coming at him. So there's that. I think there's also good juju on the Packers side because RotoWire's own Chris Owen is going to this game.
Whoa!
But I know, right? Yeah,
that changes everything.
I've requested footage of Renegade that even as someone who, let's just say, does not care for the Steelers, that does seem like it's totally electric in Heinz Field when that goes down. But even with those good vibes with Chris going, I'm still on the Steelers here.
Okay, we're in agreement on that one, John. I want to take a moment here to recognize our wonderful sponsor, Circa Resort and Casino out in Las Vegas. My favorite casino by a mile. We love some of the other establishments that we will not name out in Vegas, but there's a reason that Circa was voted the best casino in Las Vegas for the 3rd year in a row recently. And we want to remind you that it is, in fact, football season at Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. They have the best pool in history, not even just in Vegas, like in the history of the world, the best pool. It's called Stadium Swim. We're talking 3 levels, 6 pools, a 143-foot diagonal screen. It's basically like a giant jumbotron, but it's right in front of you, not perched on the top of a stadium. Stadium Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. They play every game. This time of year, you could go there on a Saturday and watch every single college football game you want. They got it all sectioned off. They got the big game in the middle. It is just a perfect setup if you're a sports fan. You go on a Sunday, you got all the NFL games there. You got hockey, you got NBA, everything you could want. You can watch all the action poolside. They got a bunch of seating options, day beds, temperature-controlled cabanas. You could just sit in the hot tub like I do and get hot tub overexposures from watching games all day. But check out Stadium Swim. It's located at Circa Resort and Casino. It's open 365 days a year. That's the other big thing, John. All these other casinos, I don't know what they're doing. They're shutting down. It's warm. It's warm enough to be swimming. Certainly warm enough to sit in a hot tub. Circa keeps that pool open all year round, all sports, all seasons. You can book today at circalasvegas.com. That is circalasvegas.com. And for those of you wondering, I'm not joking about the hot tub overexposure. I'm a 2-time survivor for a reason. Yeah, man. I think that was Vegas 2018 where I was really struggling for a week after sitting in the hot tub for way too long. Nonetheless, Titans Buccaneers. I think if you watch this game, you're going to feel like you sat in a hot tub for too long. Our total is 39.5. Our line is Tampa Bay -1 at home. What are we doing here, John? I would like to implore us to not use this in the Circa contest because I do not trust either of these teams. I will say, though, I give slight lean to the Buccaneers. I know they've lost, 5 in a row. They haven't been that bad. I still think this team is better than I expected. It really has nothing to do with Baker Mayfield. But they committed just a litany of errors in the second half. Carlton Davis got roasted for 3 separate big plays to allow Houston to hang around and ultimately win that game. Tampa Bay does have some injuries in the defensive backfield that we want to keep an eye on. Although Vita Vea did practice in full, that's huge for their defense. But Carlton Davis, the man himself, did not practice on Wednesday. Jamel Dean, their other starting corner, dealing with a concussion. He was limited at practice Thursday, still in protocols as of now. If the Tampa Bay defense is healthy, that's where I lean. I would be lying if I said I have a great read on this game.
Yeah, Carlton Davis, DNP, parentheses, shame. But let's see. Beyond that, yeah, this one is, as far as looking at where the money's coming in, this is another game where the public doesn't really know what to do. I think, if nothing else, we're not using this on the card. I can build too flimsy of a case for either side, and neither case could I make overly strong. I could see either team winning here. Obviously, that's reflected in the number. Bucks at home, that steers me towards picking them. But at the same time, I mean, if the Bucks are going to get roasted the way they did against C.J. Stroud, obviously Levis a lesser quarterback at this time and probably moving forward, but you still feel relatively optimistic about what the Titans can do through the air in this one, and Hopkins showing his resurgence over the last little bit. I think that all works well, but I don't know if Derrick Henry really gets going in this spot against that run defense. It's I'm on the Bucks here, but I mean this again is like the stay away the century of the week.
Underdogs in games with a total under 42 are covering at about a 60% clip over the last 4.5 seasons. That comes via the Action Network. We can recite all the Mike Vrabel as an underdog stats that we want. He is 12-9-1 against the number as a dog, coming off of a straight up loss. Titans, of course, lost on Thursday night to the Steelers. Do you give any real credence to a slight rest advantage here with Tennessee playing on Thursday?
Not a major one, but it's certainly something to consider. And one of our viewers, Benson, points out that the only time that the Bucks have won this year at home was against the Bears early in the season. So, the Bears were in really rough shape there in September, especially. So there is probably that lack of home field advantage for them relative to other teams. And he also notes that the sharp money is coming in on Tennessee. So maybe I'm off on this one. I cannot waffle on the air like that. So I'm staying with the Bucks, but just for the record, I am feeling worse about it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we appreciate Benson giving us that note there. I don't consider myself sharp money. I'll tell you that. I would love to someday. But look, I think you can tell by the way we're talking about this one. We don't have a strong lean. The line's at 1 for a reason, but I mean, sometimes you just try to default to all right, which quarterback do I trust most? And Baker versus Levis, to me, that's kind of a wash at this point, which says a lot about Baker. And then I go to, all right, which coach do I trust more? I trust Mike Vrabel a lot more than I do Todd Bowles.
Yeah, Todd Bowles is the definition of mid. And that might be generous.
All right, John, we got a battle of the birds going on in Arizona this weekend. The Atlanta Falcons head out there. They are 2-point favorites. Cardinals given points at home. Totals 42.5. I labeled this my Nick Whalen stay away of the week in my beating the book column. This is one of those, and we get a few of them every year, John, and we try to talk about them on the show. It's like the schedule makers just have this incredible foresight. It's like all this stuff is going on with the Cardinals. Like they hit rock bottom last week. The defense gets worse and worse every week. They're coming off the Clayton Tune game. Now we're getting Kyler Murray for the first time in a calendar year. Who knows what he's going to look like? And of course, they're playing the Atlanta Falcons. This should be a spot where I would love to bet against the Cardinals, but I don't know if I can keep going back to the well with Atlanta, man. I mean, they've been in so many spots where you think, man, how could you possibly lose this game? And last week was one of those. And they just find a way. They find a way. They refuse to adjust. They refuse to use their best players every single week. And, I keep talking myself into Well, eventually they'll figure this out. Eventually they'll realize what seemingly everybody else has realized, that hey, if you give Bijan Robinson the ball, if you give Kyle Pitts, Drake London the ball, you're going to be okay. I don't know if we could put any faith in the Falcons, man. It's not really a good spot to me for either team just because of the unknown with Kyler Murray. So I think we should start there. Like, what are your expectations for Murray specifically? Coming back to a new coaching staff, a lot of new teammates. Obviously, we haven't seen him play in a while. I think physically he'll be fine. I don't think a torn ACL in the year of our Lord 2023 is like a death knell on a career like it used to be, especially for someone who's as young as he has. But mobility, trust in that knee, those are big factors for Kyler Murray specifically.
Yeah, I think Atlanta's secondary better be ready to pass defend a lot in this one. Even if James Conner comes back, you can't expect him to be 100% ready for a huge workload. And I don't think that Kyler is going to use his legs a ton. I think that this is just going to be a very pass-happy approach. I would imagine that he's going to try to avoid A.J. Terrell as much as possible. Jesse Bates where he can. So for fantasy, maybe you're a little worried about McBride, but I think that it's going to be a high pass attempt volume type of game for Kyler. And it's interesting. I was just digging into the against the spread numbers. The Falcons are 1-3 against the spread on the road. The Cardinals, shockingly, 3-1 against the spread at home. And now they get Kyler Murray back. And I think Murray is the better quarterback between these two, kind of dovetailing off of what you were saying with breaking down the Bucs Titans. So as much as I would almost like to buy back into the Falcons because of how down everyone is on them after last week, I'll just keep rolling with the Cardinals on this one. I think their home trend is interesting. It's not a huge sample, of course, but I think Kyler Murray coming back is a nice, bit of a nice jolt for this Cardinals team. So I think I do like Arizona here as home dogs.
Falcons have not led at the half yet this season. They've been in 3 ties at the half, so good for them. They've been down 6 times. They dig themselves holes. They don't start quickly, and against Arizona, maybe you have the opportunity to recover. But oh man, it's a spot where Atlanta should win, right? And I want to dive in on something our guy Benson threw in the chat here, and I actually think it's a good point to discuss because he's totally right that if you watch any very basic football analysis show, you're going to hear the Arthur Smith narrative. You're going to see it a ton in the fantasy world. Is there a zag to be had here, or is Arthur Smith really that bad, John?
No, there definitely could be. Like, if fantasy football didn't exist, everyone would just think that the Falcons are solid.
I think you're right. I think you're right on that. And Benson notes he thinks this should be closer to Atlanta 3. I think realistically that it probably should be. If you take the narrative out of it, even as disappointing and untrustworthy, if that's a word, as Atlanta has been, they're the much better team. They're the much better team, and I think it specifically should be able to take advantage of Arizona's defense. With that said, I think I lean Atlanta here. I'm just gonna hold my nose and take it. I fully expecting to be let down. We're not putting it on the card. This is a big stay away for me in that regard. Let's go to Lions Chargers, John. Fun game out west this week. Lions are 3-point favorites. That line has climbed from 1.5 earlier this week up to 3. It's held there for about the last 48 hours. That's where it locked in the Circa contest as well. 48.5 is our total. Lions coming off a bye. They're getting David Montgomery back. There's been some chatter on the Lions side of things that we're not going to go back to just pounding David Montgomery 25 times. It feels like they're finally starting to trust Jahmyr Gibbs a little bit more, which is huge. I think that's a good thing. But they were having a lot of success when it was the David Montgomery raid offense earlier this season. So certainly getting him back is a plus. On the Chargers side of things, really weird game to evaluate. It's like you get credit for going on the road, winning against a great defense in the New York Jets, but you start the game off with a punt return. You get a defensive touchdown as well. I mean, the offense was abjectly horrible for most of that game. Like their only real scoring drive was, I believe, after a turnover deep in Jets territory when Austin Eckler punched one in.
Oh, that was so sick for fantasy. No, Eckler was like right on the line of living like a kind of disappointing game, and then the Chargers get that turnover, get stopped right at the 1 yard line. It's like, oh my God, let's go, garbage time.
Well, and then they ran that horrible play on first down where Herbert almost took like a 12-yard loss, and put on him to get rid of it, and Eckler I think punched it in on the next play. But nonetheless, the Chargers offense looked horrible. The offensive line looked terrible. Herbert was constantly under siege. Nobody was open. It was just one of those games where you kind of just gut it out and get through it. So how do we now evaluate the Chargers, coming back home? Not that it really matters for them all that much, but it's, still a situational advantage, even if the crowd isn't overwhelmingly on their side. I lean Lions here. Again, it's another number that's right at 3, so you're never going to feel great about it. I think the Chargers, if this does turn into a shootout, I would like to say I could trust them to keep up, but this is a team that is still searching for a second wide receiver, and I don't know that just magically appears, whether it's Jalen Guyton or Quentin Johnston. I don't think that just happens out of nowhere this week.
Yeah, it's funny the way that we kind of summed up the Chargers game against the Jets. They won by 21 points. Again, Zach Wilson having a lot to do with that, of course, but I think what I'm about to say is one of the more shocking things I've said on this show. I love the Chargers in this game. I think everyone.
Oh,
yeah, I think everyone is a little bit too peachy keen on the Lions. I think it's always nice to mention the teams coming off a bye, but I don't know offhand how the Lions have performed off the bye under Dan Campbell. I think the Chargers. I think the Lions, I think their defense is a little bit overrated, so that this will be a much easier defense to face off against than what the Chargers were going against on Monday night in the Meadowlands. So I think the return home, I know that there's depth concerns with those pass catchers, but we've seen instances where if it's necessary, Keenan Allen and his giant, did you see the picture of his shoulder this week?
Yeah, what was that? That was not cool.
He basically has like a vestigial head on his trapezius muscle from an AC joint sprain he had back in like his rookie season. He's just rocking out with it nonetheless. But we've seen Keenan Allen just carry a passing game before. So I think him and Eckler can get it done. As far as that passing game production is concerned, I'd like to see Eckler run a little bit better, as a traditional running back, but he's still a huge threat in that passing game. You give a slight special teams advantage to the Chargers as well. I don't know if I would have spent a 4th-round pick on Darius Davis, but that guy was the fastest guy in college football last year. So that's something. And Joey Bosa is playing like a man possessed right now. So Ben Johnson's going to have to do a good job of having Jared Goff drop back away from Bosa, because if he's going towards that side, Bosa's got him. I don't know if anyone can stop Bosa right now. So I like the Chargers here. I like that they're getting a field goal at home. I wouldn't shock me if this ends up being a push, but I do like the Chargers.
So everything you said about the Chargers defense is accurate. And obviously Zach Wilson had a lot to do with that last week, but I think the Chargers defensive line especially stepped up. The question is, can they do that against a good offensive line? The Lions are 3rd in PFF in pass blocking, whereas the Jets are 28th. So how much of that is just kind of a little bit of recency bias going up against one of the worst lines in the league, where I'm not saying Detroit is impenetrable, but I don't think Jared Goff is going down 5 times in this game.
Goff can run himself into sacks, though. I've seen it time and time again. I do give the advantage to the Chargers defensive front. They've put so much resources into making that unit really, really strong. So despite the fact that they do have that good offensive line, I think it doesn't end up being a massive advantage. I think if nothing else, maybe it's like a stalemate over the course of this game. And then I give the lean to Herbert over Goff. So yeah, I'm on the Chargers. All right. Better for worse. That's just kind of where I'm sitting with it. Benson does want to know, as revenge game narrative experts, does this count as a semi-revenge game for Goff? I'm ruling no.
No. I'm going to say no. If they're playing the Rams, yes. If they're playing the Chargers, no. I know you're in the right city, but no. I don't think he has any ill will toward this franchise. Jared Goff, by the way, on extended rest with the Lions, 5-1 against the spread. So something to consider there. But I look forward to debating this with you via text over the next 2 days, because I'm a Justin Herbert guy. All right. I think there's been some criticism piled on him this season at times that is not deserved. I think it's more of a byproduct of the coaching and the situation and losing Mike Williams early in the year. So you can talk me into this. I'm not that solid on the Lions, but I do think, having a pretty extreme rest advantage here with the Chargers playing on Monday night, that's ultimately what ticks that one in my favor, but not a best bet by any means.
91% of the money. 91% of the money on the Lions right now. 91.
Oh boy. All right. Okay. That's a little damning. Giants-Cowboys, John. The number's up to 17 at the DK Sportsbook. The number locked in Circa at 16.5. Teams favored by at least 12 points this season are 5-1 against the number. I believe the Bills. I forget who they played. They're the only team that has not covered. Giants game, yeah, of course, was the Giants game. But I mean, 17 is the highest number of the year. There's a difference between 12 and 17. I don't think you could just equate that necessarily. Low total, 38.5. Tommy DeVito at quarterback for the Giants. When the Cowboys get in these spots, they tend to do well. They're pretty much every win this season has come by a huge margin, especially at home. We saw them win 40-0 on the road in week 1. I am always cognizant of taking a big number here, but it's really tough to lay out the argument for why the Giants keep this close.
Yeah, 17 points is uncharted waters this season. And I think one of the most just sort of viscerally shocking blowouts of the year, not shocking in terms of the result necessarily, but just what you saw on the field was that week 1 Sunday night game between these two teams. And now you don't have Daniel Jones. You don't even have Tyrod. You have, I'm sorry, almost said Danny, Tommy DeVito out there. Oh my, this is going to be the bloodbath of bloodbaths. I mean, I think that if there were odds on this, I would say that the Cowboys defense scores more than the Giants offense here. It's going to be the Cowboys would have to commit so many stupid turnovers for this to be even moderately competitive. So 17 points, it's huge, but I'm not really blinking. I like the Cowboys in this spot. And I say this as someone who usually hates betting on the Cowboys.
Cowboys wins this season have come by 40 points, 20 points, 35 points. They had the 3-point win over the Chargers and then the 23-point win over the LA Rams. So on average, they're beating teams by more than 17. And if you take out that Chargers game, which was on the road, they're winning by 20 plus points per game at home this season. So you could argue that this number is too low. The only thing you could really say against it is is it too obvious? All we're saying is how do the Giants possibly compete? We've seen teams rise up in these spots. It could be, kind of a lazy narrative of, Dallas isn't taking the game seriously. Even if that's the case, man, I think Dallas could not take this game seriously. And, worst case scenario, win 27-3. How are the Giants going to score? How are the Giants going to move the ball? I don't think this is a game where you're worried. You're not worried about a backdoor cover even, right? I don't see it. And, you mentioned Tyrod Taylor, he's not available. He's on IR, obviously. Matt Barkley's your backup. If Tyrod Taylor was on the bench and there was a chance that if, DeVito gets knocked out of the game that we'd see Tyrod, I'd be a little more worried. But it's there's not even that. There's not even some backup quarterback coming in that you fear would throw New York back into the game. And we saw it a couple of weeks ago in that Jets game where they're in overtime with DeVito. And what do? They're just running Saquon Barkley, or they're dumping it down to Saquon Barkley for a maximum of 3 yards. That's the entire offense right now.
And the Giants defense has been so mercurial. But we saw them start out just flat on their back. Not even just that Cowboys game, but generally. But then they started to turn a corner a little bit. But since the quarterback injuries have really taken hold, they just don't have a fighting chance because the possessions are so short. So the defense is going to get gashed over the balance of this game. I think this is actually a great spot for Tony Pollard. If you're interested in his props, I would be interested in the odds of him scoring 2+ touchdowns in this game, because I think the Cowboys are just going to be living in Giants territory and even starting drives in Giants territory. So huge number, crazy. That is real. The number had to be this big to get us to talk about this game for this long, because otherwise, this is you don't want to see too much of this one, folks. But then you do if you like the Cowboys minus 17. So there we have it.
Hey, it's football, man. I'm going to watch it no matter what. I like your Tony Pollard call. I also like Rico Dowdle this week. I got him going in some DFS lineups. Going to be looking into some things on Prize Picks here in Wisconsin. If and when this turns into a blowout, I think we see a lot of Rico Dowdle in the second half. Snap count has already increased over the last couple of weeks. There's been some chatter, coming out of Dallas that they want to get him more involved, and I think this could be a pretty obvious spot to do that. So, the question is, John, do we feel comfortable including a big line like this in the Circa contest? 16.5. I think I would.
I think I would too, and I think that's part of the brand. In talking to some of your buds at the wedding last week, it was noted across the entire room. Whalen loves big favorites.
Hey, I won the Pick'em League 2 years ago. That's all I have to say. All right, those guys can say whatever they want. They don't have the belt. All right, I do. We got a couple more games to get to. Commanders-Seahawks is our final game in the late window on Sunday. Seahawks 6.5-point favorites at home. Total is 44. I really want to talk myself into Washington here, John. They're 4-0 against the number as a road dog this season. Ron Rivera is in that Vrabel Tomlin conversation. 60, 43, and 2 as a dog in his career. Sam Howell's been better on the road this season. I'm not sure, though, that the Washington defense is going to hold up here. I think this is a really, really good bounce back spot for Geno Smith. It feels like his value has kind of hit rock bottom these last couple of weeks, but I don't know if you can really properly equate what it means to go from playing Baltimore and Cleveland in back-to-back weeks, facing those defenses, and then go into Washington. One of my favorite podcasts I listened to, the host said, it's like taking a weighted vest off, and I actually like that analogy quite a bit. I think Seattle might be a little bit undervalued right now. The number may not reflect that. With the Commanders and with Howell, you're always kind of worried about a team that can throw its way back into games. But I started to like the spot more and more for Seattle, whereas earlier this week I was more so on the Commanders.
I can already tell this game is going to put me in hell on Sunday afternoon because not only do I like the Seahawks to cover, but my hand is forced. I have to use 2 picks in Survivor because we're a little bit further on in the season. We want to create some separation in the pool. And I have neither the Cowboys nor the Bills available to me. So for better or for worse, I got to go with Seattle as one of my picks. And I feel super queasy about it. They looked super overmatched last week. I don't give them too much guff about that because, to your point, they're playing Washington now. It's totally different. They're at home. So those are, definitely positive tailwinds for Seattle. They need to kind of put up or shut up a little bit. I know they went into last week leading the NFC West, but that's about as flimsy of a lead on a division as you could spot. So they need to get this one done. They absolutely need to. And I think my theory about Washington, getting lit up by New England last week, that obviously didn't prove true, but I stand by what I said, where if the pass rush personnel is weakened to the extent that it is, and in the secondary is playing at the low level that it is. I mean, you got Jackson Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf, you got Tyler Lockett, the most reliable dude out there. That's going to be a lot for Washington to contend with, especially if the pass rush isn't getting home. So this is a must-have, must-win game for Seattle, and I think they do it.
Mac Jones was not sacked last week. Mac Jones was only hit one time. He was barely pressured, right? So you could say, well, Washington won the game. They didn't really feel the loss of Sweat and Chase Young. They absolutely did. They completely did. New England has been hemorrhaging sacks to everybody all year. And Washington never really got close to Mac Jones. And honestly, to go back to Colts-Patriots, that's part of the reason I like the Colts, is Mac Jones threw from a clean pocket all game in week 9, and it didn't matter. They still scored 17 points. But I think in a lot of ways, this is a good spot to target Geno Smith props. It's a good spot for guys like Metcalf and Lockett this week. I think a lot of people are going to be down on this Seattle offense, but again, when you're facing Cleveland and Baltimore in back-to-back weeks, man, there are very few quarterbacks that are going to look good, let alone average, against those two defenses. So I do think this is a good spot for Seattle at home, and getting it under 7 is big for the Circa contest. I don't think it's a total blowout. I think the Commanders have proven to be frisky enough in these spots, but should be a position for the Seahawks to kind of reposition themselves in that NFC race. Let's go to the primetime games, John. What are we doing here, man? I mean, Bears-Panthers is one thing tonight, but Jets-Raiders is our Sunday night game. Broncos-Bills is the Monday night game. We will start in Vegas. This game is a true pick'em in the Circa contest at DraftKings. The Jets are 1-point favorites on the road. Our total is 37. That is the lowest total of the week.
Ooh, yeah. I think what I saw out of Zach Wilson last week in that offensive line was enough to steer me towards the Raiders here at home. Let me check the number again. I know you just mentioned it, but yeah, it's a pick 'em. So that's all well and good at other books. At one place it's Jets -1, at others it's Raiders -1. So Circa sharp as always. But I like the Raiders here. I think the pass rush is going to be nasty in this one. Max Crosby's just going to be in Zach Wilson's grill all afternoon or all evening. And I don't really view the Jets. I think the Jets are they were almost like fooling themselves or talking themselves into being like, we can make this work somehow without Aaron. and like it's got to start fading away, right? And it like you get a game like last week where you hold the Chargers, you know, in terms of yardage, like way down below their season average, and you still lose by 21 points. Like you got to start running out of faith there. And then, on the other side, I think there's still the dead cat bounce on the Raiders side for getting rid of Josh McDaniels. I think the vibes are actually kind of okay in Vegas right now.
I would say they're more than okay. I mean, it feels like a weight has been lifted.
Stogies? Yeah.
I don't know if I don't think those are stogies. I'll be honest. I think there's something else in there.
Out there, some wacky tobacco. Unbelievable.
It's legal.
It is out there. So, I like the Raiders here. Frankly, I also give them the edge at quarterback.
I definitely give them the edge at quarterback. I'm not going to debate that. I do think the Jets defense continues to play really well. I'm going to say it. I'll be the first to say the Jets have a good defense. They played extremely well last week against the Chargers. And, when you get Zach Wilson and the offense playing like that, and you give up a defensive touchdown and you give up a special teams touchdown, like you're not going to beat a team like the Chargers. But I do think the Raiders are getting the post-Giants bump. I do worry about that a little bit. We're just talking about how terrible this Giants team is, and part of the reason we feel better about the Raiders is because they beat that team. It's like, okay, I don't even know what that means anymore. I mean, I think the Giants, losing Daniel Jones mid-game to a torn ACL, it's like they're in the conversation as the worst team in the league, if not the worst right now. So I'm wary of buying back in on the Raiders just because they beat a horrible team.
That's completely fair. I mean, the Giants were an unserious outfit out there last week. I thought the Raiders were definitely a nice pick to add to the card. I forget if we did or not, but in various pick'em leagues, I definitely was all over the Raiders. That's fair. Benson smartly points out that the Raiders are literally incapable of stacking positive wins or positive moments. Definitely true. But even still, I'm gonna trust my gut here. I mean, I like the Jets money line last week, and look what happened. I mean, you can't punish yourself one way or the other too much there, but
yeah,
for whatever reason, I like the Raiders here.
All right, I was all over the Chargers last week. By the way, I got a lot of pushback in the Pick'em League. I think I had 13 confidence points on the Chargers.
Look at this guy.
I can't do it. I can't do it with Zach Wilson, man. I just can't. Like at some point, it's just. And look, I mean, it's not like Patrick Mahomes on the other side. We're talking about Aiden O'Connell. I get that, but there's something like uniquely special about Zach Wilson. When people have asked me about him, they're like, is he the worst quarterback we've ever seen? It's like, he's in the conversation. What is so unique about him is that guys who have been as bad as him don't get to start for like 3 seasons. They're just out. They're out. Like they don't, sometimes they make it through a full season max. Sometimes it's like 5 games. Other times it's like Nathan Peterman, where it's like, we literally have nobody else. We have to start you. But what's crazy about Wilson is like, we've seen so much of it, and he just has not improved. Like his pocket awareness to me is getting worse.
It's like he is, maybe he caught it from Sam Darnold, like seeing ghosts, but that's what he's doing out there. Like it's crazy. And not to really give him any excuses, but that offensive line is abysmal. I mean, they've been just completely decimated by injuries, and I think that is one of the strengths of the Raiders defense. So I know that Jets defense keeps them in, but again, we're not asking for the Raiders to cover anything. We just need them to win. I like them to win.
Okay. All right. There we go. We agree to disagree on that one. Broncos-Bills is our finisher here. Monday night. Line is 7.5 at DraftKings. It locked at 7 in the Circa contest. Bills have lost 5 in a row against the number, John. I am inclined to still back what I think is the vastly better team, a team that always seems to play better at home. I'm not really buying in on Denver. I know the defense has been better. I think they've kind of cleaned up against some inferior opponents. Obviously, the Chiefs are included in there. That's a big win. That counts. But I also think the Chiefs' offense is kind of a mess right now. Denver's defense is allowing a completion percentage of 73.6 on the year. That is one of the highest ever. Obviously, it's the highest this season. It's like in the top 5 highest in the history of the NFL. That worries me a little bit. I think this would be a pretty obvious get back on track spot for Josh Allen. But I want to hear your opinion on the Bills, John, because you've been kind of out on this team, relatively speaking, since the beginning of the year. So maybe you're not as optimistic as I am that they will eventually get this offense figured out, at least to some degree.
Yeah, I hate the direction that this line has gone, and I hate where the money's going. Like I see that, earlier in this week, I think it was 8.5. Now it's dropped a decent chunk, and a lot of the money is still coming in on Denver. So despite what my heart wants, which is the Broncos in this spot, I do think this is sort of last gasp territory for Buffalo. If the playoffs started today, they're not in the playoffs. So they got to have this one, right? And you've pulled great stats on the Bills and Josh Allen specifically over the course of the pod this year, and making good notes that generally when Josh Allen wins, he wins big, right? Like by more than a touchdown. And I do like the Bills to galvanize and win here. I'm with you where it's kind of fool's gold to take and extrapolate too much from what the Broncos have done lately, having beaten the Packers and a Chiefs team that I don't know what the heck the Chiefs were doing. That's just kind of an albatross of a game. So the Bills are the right play here. I hate it. And so it's sort of an emotional hedge for me as well, as like a better / takesman, where it's like, if the Bills cover, good for me. And if they don't, told you so.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that's a hedge. It's like a win-win for you. And it sounds like Bills are 15-2 straight up in their last 17 home games. They're 25-5 straight up in their last 30 home games. If you want to push that a little bit further, they tend to succeed at night. They are 8-1 straight up in night home games since 2019. So if you do have the Bills alive still in Survivor, that might be the way you lean this week. Also, a good note from the Action Network here: if you're looking to play the total, which is 47, the under is hitting at a 67.8% clip since 2018, when both teams are on extended rest. That is, of course, the case here. Broncos coming off a bye. Bills played on Thursday last week. The under is 23-5 in those situations this season alone.
Well, that's it. I mean, we're not totals guys most of the time, but that's something to consider here.
Yeah, I'm more of an NBA totals guy myself. But no, yeah. Well, if anything, I think we could use that to say, all right, if this is going under, does that mean we get a closer game? Does that push you toward Denver? I don't know, man. Sitting right at 7, I would like to say it's a stay away, but look, we got to find a way to get to 5 games this week.
We do. It's brutal. It's climbing Everest, really.
Yeah.
And we got our ice picks. We have our nutrition gels and various things, but we're gonna get there. We're gonna get this 5 dialed in. But yeah, as it stands, I know we got our parlays and our best bets coming up. But yeah, we got some behind the scenes talking to do.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little Survivor here, John. I mean, again, this late in the season, we can't tell you who to play necessarily because we don't know who you have. And if you're playing in the Circa contest, you're probably saving Dallas if you haven't burned them already for the Thanksgiving mini week. Buffalo obviously is an option if you have them, but I know a lot of people are going to be on Cincinnati. I think that's where our friend Jeff Erickson, who's still alive in the Circa contest, is leaning. Seattle, I think we made a case for. It's pretty tough to have a strong lean outside of that. Do we have to just go right to the sicko tier?
We might, because like you said, that we got 2 popular teams, one of which is going to be playing on Thanksgiving, so that's worthy of consideration. I guess I haven't looked at the Thanksgiving slate enough to see if there's like a good pivot.
Detroit would be the other one against Green Bay.
Okay, so then you use the Cowboys as a free space this week and just survive in advance, but that makes your Thanksgiving, you add the potential of ruining it for your entire family if your grand plans go off the rails. But I think beyond that, yeah, the sicko tier, let's unpack that. I think Pittsburgh is in there. I guess Baltimore would be in there if you still have them available, but they've had some cupcakes, so I'm not sure if that's going to be readily available for a lot of people. I already talked myself into the Cardinals, so I can't say Falcons. What else you got here in the sicko tier?
I don't know if I have anybody else, John. I can't confidently endorse just about any of these teams. I mean, if it is the sicko tier, then maybe we don't even have to offer an explanation. I don't know. Take the Saints.
Take the Saints.
Maybe take the Saints. Sure. That's my sicko tier pick. I would say the Colts. I mean, I feel slightly better about that. I feel like I'm probably higher on the Colts than most, but I think they're in a good spot this week against the Pats. But that's certainly sicko tier material. I mean, you're not feeling good about that if you're locking it in.
A Germany game with a 1.5 point spread, and you're like, no, dude, your whole season relies on this. It's good.
Yeah. No. All right, man. Let's give out our parlays of the week. We'll hand out the teaser. We'll do our best bets, and we'll be out of here. Who are you throwing together in the parlay?
All right, so the parlay pays out plus 775. I didn't have a secondary bigger moonshot parlay this week, so we're just keeping it straight up, pretty much as usual. A couple of spreads and one money line underdog. I like the Browns plus 6.5. I like San Francisco -3, and I like the Chargers money line plus 140. That'll give you plus 775.
All right. I like the 49ers -3 as well. I will be pairing that with the Indianapolis Colts -2 and the Pittsburgh Steelers -3. That gets you to plus 575. Steelers is probably the one that I'm most concerned about there, especially given the number, given that that'll be low scoring. But
all they do is win by 4.
All they do is win by 4. All right, teaser of the week. We got a 7-pointer for you. We are going to tease the Buffalo Bills down to even. So they just got to win that game straight up against the Broncos. We're teasing the Dallas Cowboys down to 9.5. And we are teasing the Baltimore Ravens, John, to plus 0.5. So they either have to win that game or we will take a tie. A tie would get us that win for the Ravens. That is plus 130. Again, Buffalo, Dallas, and Baltimore teasing those by 7. Give me your best bet of the week.
I like the Chargers +3. That I know I like the money line and the parlay, but I like seeing the big numbers. But then I think as far as it just creeps me out how much everyone loves the Lions, and I give the quarterback advantage to the Chargers. They're at home. Give me the Chargers.
Okay. I like it, John. I'm making a last-second pivot here. I'm going with the 49ers -3. I've laid it all out earlier that, obviously there are some emotions at play for me as a card-carrying Jags fan, but I really like the spot for the Niners. I think they will remind us very quickly how good this team was early in the season. Like you mentioned, as long as we don't get a Brock Purdy disaster game, which I don't think we do. I think the week off is going to help him. You wonder, where he was at physically, mentally the last couple of weeks. I think having a full week to prepare, get down there early, acclimate. It's not going to be super warm in Jacksonville this time of year anyway. Not that would bother the Niners. I think this is a game that's competitive, but one that the 49ers ultimately win by probably a touchdown. So I'm locking in the San Francisco 49ers as my best bet. John, fun stuff talking through these games with you. As always, man, we thank our sponsor, Circa. Make sure you check out circalasvegas.com. That is circalasvegas.com. Book your stay right now. You can go there year-round. It's always open. It's the best casino in Vegas. We have a great time every time we're out there hanging out at Circa. Best of luck to everybody listening this week, and we will be back for our recap and Week 11 preview this time next week.